happy to be the first black bitch on television.
Oh, I want to be the first black bitch on television, I said. You know why I came up with that, really? Because after Julia, I was offered every nice role.
Diahann Carroll, born as Carol Diahann Johnson on July 17, 1935. In the Bronx, New York, grew up in a world that was not always kind to her. Her parents, John and Mabel, moved to Harlem when she was still a baby. Harlem during that time was suffering from the effects of the Great Depression. Jobs were scarce, money was limited, and almost half of the people living there were unemployed. Her father worked as a subway conductor, making about $40 a week, while her mother stayed home and tried to manage the family with very little. But the deepest pain of her childhood came when she was just 18 months old. Her parents left her with an aunt in North Carolina and disappeared for over a year while searching for work. For a small child, it felt like abandonment, and that wound stayed with her for life. Diahann often said that this early feeling of being unwanted shaped her relationships in adulthood. She later admitted that this pain played a role in her 4 broken marriages. Despite this sadness, young Diahann had a spark. At only 6 years old, she sang in the choir at Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem, and people noticed her grace and talent. By the time she was 10, she was modeling for Ebony magazine, something that was rare for black children during those years. But just as she was finding joy, her parents again sent her to live with her aunt, repeating the cycle of separation. Though her aunt cared for her, the scars of being left behind never healed. Even though her childhood was filled with painful separations, Carol's talent stood out. At just 10 years old, she earned a scholarship with the Metropolitan Opera, singing in Italian and German amazed audiences. But her mother pulled her out, fearing she would lose a normal childhood. This crushed young Diahann's dream of becoming perhaps the first black opera star. Still, she continued to study music and perform, earning money from modeling and small singing gigs. By age 15, she was making around $100 a week as a model, but her journey was far from easy. She was often told she was too dark for certain roles or that audiences were not ready for a black performer in leading positions, yet she kept going. From 1949 to 1954, she studied at the High School of Music and Art in Manhattan, alongside other young talents, including Billy Dee Williams. Around this time, she changed her name to Diahann Carroll because she wanted something unique and memorable. At just 18, she got her big break on the television show Chance of a Lifetime, winning a prize of $1,000 and gaining bookings in clubs. But behind the scenes, producers hesitated to feature her too much because of her race. One even said audiences weren't ready for a black girl headlining. Carroll faced rejection after rejection. But she continued to break barriers by singing in Harlem nightclubs, often earning $400 a week, an incredible sum for a young black woman in the 1950s. Diahann Carroll, born Carol Diahann Johnson on July 17, 1935. In the Bronx, New York, came into the world at a difficult time in American history. The Great Depression had left Harlem, where her family later settled, in deep poverty. Jobs were scarce, and hope was often hard to find. Her father, John, worked as a subway conductor and made only about $40 a week. Her mother, Mabel, stayed at home to hold the family together, but money was always tight. The most painful part of Carol's childhood came when she was only 18 months old. Her parents left her with an aunt in North Carolina while they searched for work and disappeared for more than a year. To an infant, it felt like abandonment, and that wound followed her for the rest of her life. Diahann admitted in later interviews that the early sense of being unwanted deeply shaped her personality and left her vulnerable in relationships. She linked this hurt to the reason she went through for broken marriages as an adult. At 6 years old, she began singing at the Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem. Her voice was filled with emotion, as if even then she carried stories to tell. At just 10, she started modeling for Ebony magazine, something unusual for black children at the time. Yet pain struck again when her parents sent her back to live with her aunt, repeating the same cycle of separation. Though her aunt gave her care and comfort, Diahann never forgot the sting of being left behind. This inner struggle became part of her identity. A girl with extraordinary grace and talent, but always carrying the fear of not being wanted. Despite her painful childhood, Carroll's gifts began to shine early. At 10 years old, she received a scholarship from the Metropolitan Opera to study voice. She amazed people by singing in Italian and German, something very rare for a young black child at the time. But her mother pulled her out after only a few weeks, believing her daughter should have a normal childhood. Diahann later said that decision broke her heart and might have stopped her from becoming the first black opera star at the Met. Still, she didn't give up. She continued singing, modeling, and performing in small shows. By 15, she was earning about $100 a week modeling, which was a good income for a teenager in the 1940s. However, rejection followed her everywhere. She was told she was too dark, too different, or simply not right for the roles she wanted. Still, she persisted, studying at the High School of Music and Art in Manhattan from 1949 to 1954, where she trained with other young talents like Billy Dee Williams. During this period, she changed her name from Carroll Diahann Johnson to Diahann Carroll, hoping it would stand out in the entertainment world. At 18, she appeared on the television show Chance of a Lifetime. She sang her heart out, won the contest, and took home a $1,000 prize, about $11,000 today. She also received bookings at top clubs, but behind the scenes, producers were hesitant. One bluntly said that audiences weren't ready for a black woman in the spotlight. Carroll faced doors being closed in her face time and again, but she refused to give up. By 19, she was already singing in Harlem nightclubs and earning $400 a week. An extraordinary achievement for a young black woman breaking barriers in a segregated America. Carroll's career in film began in 1954 when she landed a role in Carmen Jones, starring alongside Dorothy Dandridge and Harry Belafonte. She was only 19 at the time. However, she soon faced another heartbreak when she discovered that her singing voice had been replaced by another singer, without her permission. This practice was common in Hollywood during that era, especially with black performers, but for Carroll, it was deeply personal. She had worked hard to perfect her craft, and being silenced in such a way felt like erasure. Despite this, she pressed on. In 1959, she appeared in Porgy and Bess, another major film. Yet the set was divided by racism, with separate bathrooms and dining areas for black and white staff. Even though the cast was entirely black, Carroll was expected to remain quiet about the unfair treatment. These early years revealed the harsh reality of Hollywood. Black performers were welcome on screen only when it suited stereotypes, or when white producers allowed it. Carroll often found herself playing exotic, or secondary characters, roles that made her feel invisible. Yet she held on to her dream of one day being seen as more than a background figure. She wanted to be a star in her own right, not just a face used for decoration. By the early 1960s, Carroll began making her mark on Broadway. She starred in House of Flowers, written by Truman Capote, but the production was short-lived and left her in debt. Still, she didn't give up. In 1962, she starred in No Strings, playing a glamorous model in love with a white writer. The role was bold for its time because it showed an interracial romance on stage, something still controversial in America. Carroll delivered such a powerful performance that she won the Tony Award for Best Actress in a Musical, becoming the first black woman ever to win in that category. It was a historic moment, but not everyone celebrated her. She received hate mail, and some theaters refused to stage the show because of its storyline. Still, Carroll stood tall. She refused to let racism define her limits. However, even as she broke barriers, she was paid far less than her white co-stars. For example, she earned $20,500 a week, compared to her co-star's much higher salary. She also did not receive royalties when songs from the show became hits. Still, her victory opened doors for other black performers, and proved she was more than just a token figure in entertainment. Her Tony Awards signaled that her talent could not be ignored. The true turning point in Carroll's career came in 1968, when she starred in the groundbreaking NBC television show, Julia, For the first time, a black woman played a leading role on American television without being cast as a maid or servant. Carroll played Julia Baker, a widowed nurse raising her son after her husband's death in the Vietnam War. The show ran for 3 seasons and 86 episodes, drawing as many as 40 million viewers each week. Carroll's elegance, intelligence, and charm made her character iconic. Her style even inspired fashion trends, with fans copying her clothing. She won a Golden Globe for her performance and was nominated for an Emmy. Yet, Julia also drew criticism. Some people felt it painted too perfect a picture of black life and ignored the struggles of the civil rights era. Others argued that the show avoided political issues to keep white audiences comfortable. Carroll herself admitted that she pushed for more honest scripts but often clashed with producers. Despite these challenges, Julia proved to be a milestone in American television history, showing that a black woman could lead a show successfully. Still, behind the glamour, Carroll was struggling in her personal life. Behind the spotlight, Carroll's personal life was filled with pain and complicated relationships. She married record producer Monty Kaye in 1956, and in 1960, they had a daughter, Suzanne. From the outside, it seemed like a perfect family. But Carroll was secretly involved with actor Sidney Poitier, and by 1963, her marriage fell apart. Her affair with Poitier lasted nearly a decade, but it was full of emotional turmoil. He promised to leave his wife for her, but changed his mind, leaving Carroll devastated. At one point, he even locked her out of an apartment he had once gifted her, demanding she pay him back for it. Carroll admitted in her later memoirs that she felt desperate and controlled, even considering ending her life during this time. Her daughter often suffered from her long work hours and the chaos of her romantic life. Carroll's later marriages were also troubled. She married 4 times, with relationships often marked by jealousy, abuse, and betrayal. In 1977, her second husband, Robert DeLeon, died in a car accident just 2 years after their wedding. These personal struggles revealed a side of Carroll that many fans never knew. Behind her glamorous image was a woman fighting deep loneliness and heartbreak. In 1974, Carroll took on one of the most important roles of her career in the film, Claudine. She played a poor single mother, raising 6 children in Harlem while navigating welfare inspectors and a romance with a garbage collector, played by James Earl Jones. At first, Carroll hesitated to take the role, worried it would hurt her polished image from Julia. But she threw herself into the part, spending time with real single mothers and visiting welfare offices. The experience shook her deeply. She lost weight from the stress and struggled with anxiety, but her performance was unforgettable. The film earned her an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress, making her the first black woman nominated in a lead role since Dorothy Dandridge in 1954. Still, not everyone celebrated the movie. Some activists criticized it for portraying poverty in ways they felt were too polished. Protests broke out, and some called it Uncle Tom cinema. But Carroll stood by the film, saying it gave voice to women who had been ignored. For her, the role of Claudine was not about glamour but about truth. It showed the world that she could take on serious, emotional roles